Welcome back to my animal education series. Today I'm here with Elliot at the Gulfarium. Hello there.
How y'all doing?
I'm doing pretty well. So right now we're standing in an alligator enclosure. So let's start off with, how many alligators do you have in here?
So here in our 4-gator habitat, we have a total of 5 adult American alligators. We do have 4 females scattered throughout. So 3 smaller ones, our dominant female Willow's kind of over here on the side. And then we do have 1 big male Brutus, and he's about 11 feet long right now, but that's not even fully grown yet.
And it is a big alligator, and I think you guys can see pretty much better than I can, but I can't even see him in this pond.
Yeah, he's pretty good at being sneaky underneath the water, and since they've been moving around, it's kind of kicked up a lot of the dirt. So I'm actually not entirely sure where he is at the immediate moment, but I think he was last seen over in this section.
We just did a big feeding enrichment activity here, and you were feeding Willow over there. Mm-hmm. So what is the importance of getting in with these alligators and feeding them hands-on?
The main importance is to be able to work with them better ultimately. So the training that we do with them is station training primarily, having them come to a specific spot within the habitat and then reinforcing them with food. So that's the most basic part of it, and that allows us to work with them a lot more easily, not just for our safety, but also if we had to do anything that's maybe more veterinary related, such as possibly giving a physical, drawing blood, giving an injection or something like that. It ideally makes it easier and safer for them as well as for us to conduct those procedures versus if we didn't have that training set in place.
Yeah, I've seen very similar things happen to other facilities as well. Like, you want to get the animals used to you and used to working with you, so that if you have to do a medical procedure, it's not anything different or strange for them, because it's very kind of routine. And also, it's a lot better to have a calm alligator than a very angry alligator if you had to get some blood drawn. So how long have you been working here with the alligators?
I've been working here with these alligators, primarily with Willow, for just a little over 1 year now.
And have you shown, has the alligator shown any significant benefit with working with you and just working hands-on? I believe you mentioned to me off camera that kind of one trainer handles each alligator. So how's the process of switching from the previous trainer to you?
It definitely takes time for a specific alligator to get used to a different person. They definitely recognize faces and can know that, hey, whenever I was initially training, this is somebody different that's different from my normal trainer. Callie was taking Willow's main training before I took over. So there was definitely an adjustment period until she got used to me. As far as different benefits of maybe how she reacts to me versus somebody else, there's not too much of a difference, although one of our other trainers who is not here today, today's her off day, I'm training her on Willow right now, and it's still going through that same adjustment period that I went through whenever I was initially first training with her.
So we've talked, I think, enough about these animals in here, but let's talk about alligators in general. Where can you find alligators out in the wild?
So these guys can be found right here in the southeastern part of the United States, and they'll range as far west as about eastern Texas or so, out here especially in Florida, and then up as far north as about North Carolina. That's their range throughout here, and there's roughly about 5 million throughout their entire range, but about 1.25 million just here in Florida alone.
That doesn't sound too endangered to me, so do you happen to know their status off the top of your head?
Today their status is least concern.
Which is great.
There's no exactly, yeah, there's no concern right now today. These guys, although we're not always like that, the American alligator is actually one of the first success stories to the Endangered Species Act, as these guys were overhunted back in the 1950s and 1960s, unfortunately, primarily for their hide, but also for their meat as well. So they were hunted to the point of almost going extinct, and thankfully in 1973 they were placed on the endangered species list when that came about, and through conservation and research they were actually taken off of the endangered species list in 1987, to the point that they're booming as far as their populations are concerned today.
I always mention it on the channel every time I'm doing an interview or doing a video about animals that are least concerned. There's a bunch of animals that are endangered in the world, so it's always great to hear of another animal that's least concerned and they're doing really well out in the wild.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So what will these alligators eat out in the wild?
So out in the wild, alligators are carnivorous. They'll eat pretty much anything that they can get their jaws on at whatever size they are in their life. So that could be anything from various mammals, which as far as size is concerned, ones that are about Brutus's size or larger, again going back to that 11-foot size, they could easily take down something like a deer or a wild hog that might wander too close to the water's edge. But they'll also prey on a variety of birds and fish if they're fast enough to catch those, as well as reptiles, which can include turtles, as well as sometimes even each other. They are known to be cannibalistic on occasion as well. But they're opportunistic feeders, which essentially means that they'd much rather have easier to catch prey than something that they have to really work for. So first, they'd much rather go after something that's maybe young, old, sick, dead, or dying before they go after that healthy individual animal that can get away very quickly.
Just a lot less energy for them to expel. Especially like a larger animal like Brutus, he's gonna have a harder time moving around nearly as fast to catch like a fish or anything moving pretty quickly in the water. So obviously Brutus is a big alligator, so not a whole lot of animals are probably gonna eat him. But maybe for a smaller alligator, what might eat the smaller alligator?
Yeah, so whenever they're first hatch out, especially, is when they're the most vulnerable, as they're pretty small, only about 6 to 7 inches long or so. So that could be anything from other alligators, like I mentioned earlier, but oftentimes birds like wading birds, such as herons, can eat them. Other mammals might sometimes pick them off as opportunity arises, but also things like snapping turtles and things like that. So they do have quite a few different predators when they're smaller, but they typically lose any sort of major predators by the time they hit about roughly 4 feet long.
What are some unique physical adaptations that help these alligators survive out in the wild?
So they have a lot of different things that can help them out in the wild. If you want, I can start from the front and then just kind of work our way back.
That's good for you, that's good for me.
Yeah, that'll work. So number one, probably the thing that everybody knows most is those really powerful jaws that alligators have. Whenever they're fully grown, they can have a bite force of around 2,000 pounds of pressure per square inch in their jaws. So
like you're not pulling your arm out of that.
Oh no, definitely not. So they do have that very powerful bite force, and to go along with that, they'll have about roughly 70 to 80 cone-shaped teeth in their mouth to help hold on to any prey that they're capturing. But as far as, say, finding that prey, they do have ISOs around their upper and lower jaws, which is short for integumentary sensory organs, and those are little exposed nerve endings that'll actually help them feel and sense movement and vibrations in the water. For alligators, those are strictly located around their face primarily, which is where they're going to be capturing that prey from. So then other adaptations going down their body, they do have those very distinct ridges called osteoderms. Those are basically bony plates that are located right underneath their skin that'll act like a suit of armor for them. So that'll help protect them, but they'll also secondarily act like solar panels as well. So that'll help them absorb a lot more heat from the sun whenever they're out thermoregulating their bodies, whenever they're basking. And continuing down their body, they do have that very powerful tail, which is mainly going to be used for swimming, but they'll also use that to store fat as well as a form of buoyancy for them. But as far as swimming goes, these guys can swim pretty fast. For adults, they can get up to about roughly 20 miles per hour with 1 to 2 flicks of their tail.
Wow.
So they are very fast, and I would not recommend trying to outswim these guys.
Yeah, I always thought alligators were pretty slow, and I'm definitely rethinking that now.
Oh yeah, definitely. These guys are very powerful on land, as you can see one kind of walking around in the background. They obviously seem kind of slow in their walking, but whenever they can sprint up to about roughly 10 to 11 miles per hour as well. So they can be pretty quick when they need to, but again, they're very energy efficient and would much rather conserve energy versus expend that energy.
Yeah, I bet it's probably better for them to sit on the water's edge with their eyes and their nose just barely sticking above the water than chasing after something on land. So we mentioned the face and the ISOs on the alligator. What are the main differences between the alligator and the crocodile?
So the main differences, going back to their head, are their head shape primarily, or their snout shape. So for alligators, they're going to have a much more broad, flat U-shaped snout. So especially with what we were seeing with Brutus when he was out, he has a very, very wide head.
Yes.
But your crocodiles, on the other hand, are going to have a much more tapered, typically more narrow V-shaped snout. So that's the main difference you'll notice right off the bat. But the other one that hopefully you don't get really close enough to see it is in their teeth. So alligators have a very large overbite. So their bottom teeth will typically be covered by their top jaw. So only their top teeth are going to be hanging down in an alligator smile. But for crocodiles, they don't have that overbite that alligators do. So their teeth are going to more interlock. So you can see both the top as well as the bottom teeth in a crocodile smile.
And then also I learned, I think on some YouTube videos, some crocodiles have ISOs that go down the length of the body versus the alligator just on their head. Which, if you're definitely close enough to see those, then you're way too close to any of those animals.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because I think I saw a picture once, it's like a really small dot on the scale of these animals. I'm not wanting to be this close to either of them. Because as you mentioned, they move pretty quick, and again, I don't want to figure out how fast they move.
Oh yeah, no, not in that close-up scenario.
And one thing I wanted to cover is I did a video on a Keystone Species, or several Keystone Species several weeks ago. And I want to mention, I want to cover at least in this video, on how alligators play their part as a Keystone Species down here in southeast of the United States. So do you mind kind of explaining more about how these alligators play that role down here?
Yeah, sure. So alligators, as you mentioned, are a very important Keystone Species. So mainly down in the Everglades especially, is the main thing that they'll contribute is they'll actually produce essentially mud wallows that they'll create within the Everglades, which end up pooling up with water, and they'll actually hold that water through, say, dry spells that might come about during the summer and things like that. Those mud wallows will actually then play a part as creating small microhabitats for a lot of different species of other animals aside from the alligators. It definitely benefits the alligators and other alligators, but they'll also play a part in creating areas for fish, turtles, various amphibians, waterfowl, and things like that. So they're very important to those other species when dry spells do come about.
So we can thank the alligators for helping out all the sorts of animals down in the Everglades. And we know there's a bunch of different animals and species in the Everglades, so probably a whole bunch of animals are probably even more than we're listing benefiting from these alligators.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But thank you so much for telling us about this amazing species here. I've always loved alligators for a very long time, so I haven't covered an alligator video in a very long time as well. So when given the opportunity to come out here and do this, I thought it was a great opportunity. And when you guys said I can even be in the enclosure on this little patio here, I was super excited to be in here. But again, thank you for telling me about all the alligators. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah, nice to talk to you, cool.
And thank you guys so much for watching this week's video. Don't forget to leave a big thumbs up down below, subscribe to my channel, and also I'll see you next week.